Once upon a time, in a peaceful little village surrounded by green fields and blooming flowers, there lived a young girl named Clara. Clara had a voice as sweet and pure as the morning birds. Every time she sang, it felt as if the whole world paused to listen. People in the village adored her for her beautiful melodies, and children would often gather around, enchanted by the charm of her voice. Clara lived with her mother, Grace, in a small, cosy cottage at the edge of the village. What made Clara's gift even more special was that she was the daughter of Daniel, a once famous singer from the bustling city nearby. Daniel had been celebrated far and wide for his magnificent voice. He used to perform in grand halls and theatres, captivating audiences with every note. But one day, he decided to leave the busy life of the city behind and move to the tranquil village to be with his family. He wanted a simple life, where he could raise his daughter in a place filled with love and warmth. Clara had inherited her father's voice, and from a young age, she sang along with him, learning every melody and lyric. When Daniel passed away, Clara made a promise to herself that she would carry on his legacy and one day become a singer he would be proud of. One bright, sunny afternoon, Clara was singing by the village well, her voice echoing softly across the fields. As she sang, a young man passing by on horseback stopped to listen. His name was James, the only son of a wealthy businessman from the city. He was handsome and curious, often venturing out to explore places beyond his luxurious life. That day, as he rode through the village, he heard a melody so beautiful that it made him stop in his tracks. James looked around, searching for the source of the voice that had caught his attention. Then he saw her, a girl in a simple dress standing by the well, her eyes closed as she sang, completely lost in the beauty of the music. He stood still, mesmerized, afraid to move, as if the moment would shatter if he made a sound. From that day on, James found himself returning to the village more often. He would make excuses to leave the city, telling his father he needed a break or that he was overseeing some work. But in truth, he came only to listen to Clara's singing. Each time he would watch from a distance, hiding behind the large trees or standing near the path, his heart racing as he listened to her voice. One day, James couldn't resist any longer. He needed to know more about this girl who had stolen his heart with her song. He asked the villagers, but they were protective of Clara and wouldn't tell him much. After all, she was the pride of their village. They worried about a city man's intentions with a simple village girl. But James didn't give up. He kept asking, showing kindness and respect, until finally, an old woman took pity on him. "Her name is Clara," the woman told him softly. "She lives in the small house by the hill with her mother. But listen carefully, young man. She is a treasure. Do not play with her heart." With this newfound knowledge, James felt a rush of hope. The next morning he gathered his courage and rode up to the little house by the hill. He saw Clara sitting outside humming softly as she worked on some embroidery. Taking a deep breath, he approached her, his heart pounding in his chest. "Hello," he greeted gently. Clara looked up, startled. She had noticed him in the village a few times before, but he had never approached her. "Hello," she replied shyly, setting her work aside. "My name is James. I've heard you sing many times, and I just wanted to say that your voice is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard." Clara blushed, lowering her eyes. "Thank you. My father taught me to sing. I sing to remember him." From that day on, they met often. James would visit the village as much as he could, and each time they would talk for hours, learning about each other's lives. He told her about his family, his father's business, and his love for exploring new places. Clara shared stories of her father, her dreams of becoming a singer, and her longing to make him proud. The more time they spent together, the deeper their bond grew. What began as friendship soon blossomed into love, but their happiness was short-lived. One day, James's father, Mr. Richard, found out that his son was spending time with a girl from the village. Furious, he confronted James. "Who is this village girl you've been wasting time with?" Mr. Richard demanded. "You are supposed to be helping me run the family business, not chasing after some peasant girl." "She's not just some girl," James replied calmly. "Her name is Clara, and I love her." Mr. Richard's face turned red with anger. "You will forget her," he ordered. "You have a duty to this family, and that does not include wasting your time on a girl with no status or wealth. You will marry someone from our class, someone suitable." "No," James said firmly. "I will marry only Clara." Seeing his son's defiance, Mr. Richard decided to take drastic measures. He sent James away to the United States under the pretense of higher studies. He thought that the distance would make his son forget about the village girl. But even as James boarded the plane, he looked back, his heart aching for the girl he was leaving behind. Clara was heartbroken when she learned that James had left without a word. She felt lost and alone, her heart heavy with sorrow. For days she couldn't bring herself to sing, but then she remembered her father's words, "When you are sad, sing. Let your heart speak through your voice." And so Clara began to sing again, pouring all her pain and longing into her songs. Word of her talent spread beyond the village, reaching the city. She was invited to perform at small events and gatherings, and soon her name became known. People marveled at her voice filled with such raw emotion. She worked hard, improving her skills, and before long, she became one of the most celebrated singers in the city. Years passed. Mr. Richard thought his plan had worked. James had completed his studies and even lived in Australia for a while. But no matter where he went, his thoughts were always with Clara. He missed her terribly, and each time he saw someone singing, his heart ached for the girl in the village. Finally, after much persuasion, his father allowed him to return home. The first thing James did was to find out about Clara. When he learned that she was now a famous singer, his heart swelled with pride. He decided to go see her perform, not as a stranger hiding in the shadows, but as the man who still loved her with all his heart. The night of the concert, James sat quietly at the back of a grand hall. As Clara stepped onto the stage, dressed in a beautiful gown, looking every bit the star she had become, his heart skipped a beat. And then she began to sing. Her voice was more powerful, more beautiful than he had ever imagined. It was filled with all the pain, love, and longing that they had shared. After the performance, he went backstage, his hands trembling with anticipation. When Clara saw him standing there, she froze. It was as if time stood still. But instead of running into his arms, she turned away. "Why did you leave?" she whispered, her voice shaking. "I didn't want to," James said softly. "I had no choice. My father forced me to go." "I waited for you," Clara said, her eyes filling with tears. "I thought you forgot about me." "Never," James whispered. "Not for a single day. I loved you then, and I love you now. Please give me a chance to make things right." Slowly, Clara turned to face him. She saw the pain, the regret, and the love shining in his eyes, the same look he had when they first met by the well so many years ago. Her anger melted away, replaced by the old familiar feeling she had buried deep in her heart. "Did you really miss me?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "More than words can say," he answered. With a deep sigh, she nodded. "Then let's not waste any more time." From that moment on, they began to rebuild their love, stronger than before. It wasn't easy. There were still obstacles to overcome, but they faced them together. And whenever Clara sang, people would say that they could still hear the echoes of her first songs, the ones she sang in the little village when she was just a simple girl dreaming of love.